All right, folks. Welcome everybody once again to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I am your host, Mike Frank, here with my good buddy Jamie Uyeyama, who is. How you doing today, Jamie? I mean, you kind of look like you're in a pretty good mood.
I I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
I was just talking to Greg right before this, though. I kind of feel bad for Brian Kelly. I gotta be honest. I mean, I don't get me wrong. He he's not a likable guy, as we've discussed, but there is a lot of glee, and I kind of feel bad. Not from the Notre Dame fans' perspective, making fun of him, but he's better than a lot of some of these other guys who should have been canned a lot earlier. Is what I'll say.
All right, we'll get into that at the very end. I know a lot of people want to kind of talk about it and get our thoughts. I'll just say,
I'll dunk on him. Don't worry. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
I'll just say I absolutely disagree with you on that, and but that's okay. That's part of the show to disagree. But we'll get to that later. Notre Dame's got a lot to talk about in their own right. They back from a off week, and we'll be talking about all this. Before we do, though, I wanted to mention once again, it's a great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. You can go to the front page of Irish Sports Daily and click on the premium section and sign up. Had a number of people do that just recently. Obviously, everybody's getting excited about Notre Dame football again. So glad to see the new subscribers, and hopefully we'll get a bunch more. Also, check us out on YouTube. You can find us searching Irish Sports Daily on YouTube. And then once you find us, please like and subscribe to the channel. And if you like what you see, you can also share that content with other people and tell them about it. We'd greatly appreciate it. Also wanted to mention our first sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing, founded by ND alum Ge Wang and Chicago's go-to for the best custom suits, shirts, and sport coats. As Notre Dame reloads for the season, now's the time to refresh your wardrobe and add the perfect suit, sport coat, tuxedo, or casual jacket for fall. ESQ Master Tailors combine next-level craftsmanship with the finest fabrics to deliver a fit that's built just for you. Now with showrooms in both downtown Chicago and Winnetka, book your custom fitting and step into confidence with Chicago's finest. Mention ISD and get at your appointment and receive 10% off your entire purchase. Once again, that's esqclothing.com. Yama, we just got done watching the Marcus Freeman press conference, and obviously there's some stuff that we learned there today. Here's something that I don't think nobody's really going to hit on, but I think it's important. The first thing he does is he gets up there and he thanks the fans for the crazy environment that at USC. I mean, it was so important to him that he felt like he didn't say it enough after the game that he wanted to come out and say that first thing. And he understands how important that is to winning games, right? You come out, and if your fans give that kind of support, one, your team feeds on it. Two, it makes it very difficult for the other team to be successful. And I just loved hearing that. And I love the fact that he wrote that down and wanted to make sure that he said that and wanted his fans to know that, hey, we appreciate that as a team, and we appreciate you showing up, and we appreciate you doing your part in this, and you helped us win that game. And just loved hearing that. I thought that was a great way to kind of kick off the press conference. And then the bad news comes, of course, and that is questionable Matty Augustine with a concussion. We didn't think that he'd be playing much either. Will Black, same thing, concussion, but then you see Jordan Patella with concussion. You're like, wait a minute. Cooper Flanagan's been on there. He played last week. It's the same thing, left Achilles. Will he play? I think we'll see him play more and more as time goes on. Micah Gilbert, left hand, that's been out for a while. I got to figure that's probably coming around to where he might be able to do something since he's been out for quite a while. Jaden Greathouse, right thigh. I don't understand it, man. I mean, I don't know how long a thigh takes to overcome, but it must be a pretty deep thigh injury. But unless it's torn, I'm just not sure why it take this long for something like that to come back from. And, but then the same thing with Devonta Smith. Hopefully he's back because they could use it. Logan Thomas has been out for a while with concussion, that's kind of crazy because that was the last game he had a concussion, and So I don't know. And then of course he did mention he expected Gabe Rubio to be out for a while, but would be back before the season, or thought he could be back before the season ended. No questions on Billy Strouth, which I was a little surprised. I think we all have a pretty good understanding of where he's going to be. It's going to be a couple of weeks, I think, at least. And I mean, let's be honest. If you get past the Pittsburgh game, Jamie, and he's not ready, you're probably not going to need him for Syracuse and Stanford. I mean, I don't mean that as any disrespect, but I think Notre Dame could win without him. And so, as long as you're winning those games, you want him healthy for the playoff if you get there. So, little surprised, little surprised at some of the injuries here. And look, Notre Dame has been pretty upfront about injuries. And like, if there's a legit something, it's on there, even though it may not be strong, something that's a bad thing. So I got to hope that some of these guys will be back, especially seeing guys like Flanagan, who played last week or, 2 weeks ago. You got to hope some of those guys will be ready for this game. And will they be 100%? And then the other thing that I thought was real important, and I'm glad that Marcus Freeman said it, and that is about Christian Gray. He's been kind of the fans' whipping boy lately. He struggled in some pass coverage situations, but as we have all suspected, Jamie, you, Greg, and I on the show, it was obvious he's just not the same person, not the same health. And you see him running. He used to be able to mirror guys, even fast guys, really, really well. He has really struggled with that. Oftentimes being 2 steps behind, you can tell it looks like it's maybe a hamstring or something that is hindering him, to where he's just not the same player. But I was just glad that Marcus Freeman kind of had Christian's back there and said, hey, look, this guy's been banged up the whole year. We haven't been probably as upfront about it as we maybe should have been. But I like to see a head coach have his players back there and saying, look, this guy's struggling here, and we're getting him healthy. He's starting to get healthy and blah, blah, blah. But I just thought that was nice to see. And those were kind of my major takeaways from the press conference, at least injury wise. Anything stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, that I'm glad that he mentioned that, because that's not something that, he wasn't listed on the injury list, didn't have to mention it. And I think it is one of those things. It just shows like he's one of these guys who has his players back. And I think it is a really big deal to do that. It's a big deal, not just that the players see it, but it's like the parents see it, not just Christian Gray's parents, but like all the parents see that when he comes out and is like fighting for his guys. It is a really big deal. And that's, and honestly too, that's what kind of, not to get into the BK thing, we'll get into it later, but like, that's what separates him from BK, because that is not what BK would never do that. He never did. So I have a feeling with a lot of these injuries though, Mike, in terms of like the availability, like, with some of these, like the Logan Thomas concussion, the Will Black concussion, and all that, I think some of this is that those guys, they said they had the 2 practices last week. I have a feeling they just purposely did not practice those guys. And then Tuesday is like, well, people know how the week goes. Tuesday and Wednesday are like full practices. Like you hit,
full hitting,
right. You're in full pads. You are prepping for the game. Those are your big prep days in terms of what you're actually doing in practice. So if guys are concussions, they're not going to rush those guys back in a bye week and say, hey, get out there and knock heads right now. The Tuesday, I think we'll probably have an idea by the Thursday. Some of those guys are going to be not there, right? So, and I would say too, even with like with Greathouse and Smith, it's like one maybe these guys tweak something again. They're not quite there, but I have a feeling like they have to be pretty close. And I think one of the things that I would say with Greathouse, and I would totally get it if I was him too. And I know there's people like in the chat who are like, well, he's gone, he's whatever. No, he's legitimately hurt. But if you remember, as a freshman, he tweaked his hammy, he came back, and then he would had to sit out again. And that was something that like ruined Jaden Thomas's season that year. Like they've had problems with that where guys came back too early from like muscle pulls. And it's like Devontae Smith is an example of it. They don't need to rush these guys back when they're Braden Lindsay as basically ruined an entire season for him, as Greg pointed out in the chat. They don't need to rush those guys back if they're not ready. Hopefully they're ready. I wonder, the Botelho thing must have been like a concussion from the game. I would have to think, right? That's something that, after, but I'm really interested to kind of see, where they're at when we get like the updated list on Thursday, to see where those guys are there, if they're going to be like probable or not. And then I think one of the things too, like with Gabriel Rubio, I'm glad that he kind of mentioned it, because there's so much mystery of like what's going on with like an elbow injury that happened in practice. Nobody saw it. Who knows what the deal is with an elbow? Like, is it a bruised elbow? I mean, if it's probably a bruised elbow, I would assume that he's maybe back by now. Like he might have like dislocated his elbow or something like that. Those take a while. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where they're at. But obviously when you think about like O-line is the spot where you want Shroud to have time, but they're getting thin. Like it is getting to, they're being stretched to the limit there. So if they can get him back before the end of the regular season, and he's good, and he's good to go, not just like pushing it like where he was playing on one ankle for the whole end of last year, that would be good. It's a little bit different at defensive tackle, because I think they're deeper there, a little bit better. Even with like if Botelho misses this BC game, I mean they're totally fine at edge if he doesn't play in this game.
Back to the Christian Gray thing. I don't know if you saw there was a moment there where he was on the bench and just the intensity on his face. Yeah, I mean that was hard to watch. Just you could tell the weight of the world was on his shoulders, and it was great to see him come out and do what he did and that type of thing. But it's not just I'm out here playing and I'm struggling. It's like, my future dreams are all falling apart. You know what I mean? It is a stressful situation for these guys, especially if they're banged up and you have good film and you've done good things in the past and everybody's kind of down on you and everything. So, again, I think that's important. And that is why it's important to have a guy like Marcus Freeman, and which is going to my next point. And fans are just kind of just in a total state of panic about, Marcus Freeman leaving and blah, blah. And yeah, that could happen. Of course it could happen. It could happen with a lot of people, a lot of different things. I've seen people say, why doesn't the media ask him this question? Why don't they ask him, are you absolutely 100% staying? Well, we already know what the answer to that's going to be. And then there's also a respect part of it too. You got to kind of respect the head coach, that you're not asking him that every week, because there's a whole lot of things that are at play here when you're talking about this. And one, you just don't know what's going to happen. Maybe you sit there and you say this right now, and then all of a sudden the wheels fall off, and you get in a big argument with your athletic director, just like Brian Kelly seemed to yesterday, right? So, the way, if you read the tea leaves of what everybody thought, a lot of people thought Kelly'd be sticking around until he gets in a big argument with his athletic director, and then next thing you know, he's out the door. So, but it's not just that. It's about a lot of things that Marcus Freeman has to be smart about when he answers these questions. And he's been asked these questions. He was asked a few weeks ago about open jobs and what that means to him. And he says the same thing every time. And guess what? His agent's telling him to say that every time. But there's a reason for it. There's a lot of reasons for it. One, you want to make sure you have leverage when you're trying to negotiate for better stuff for your program. All right. We need more money. We need more NIL. We need more this and that. Well, if you've already signed a deal, right, what leverage do you have, right? If there's other things that you need that you want to try and ask for, especially if you do what you're supposed to do this year, which is get back in the playoff, his bargaining chip is going to be much higher at the end of the year, especially if he goes further in the playoff. And look, you want Marcus Freeman, folks, if you're a Notre Dame fan, you want him to be the highest paid coach in college football. So let him do his job. Let him do his job. Let him get an even bigger raise and lock this down. But you don't want to constantly put him into this situation, meaning us in the media, because there is a mutual respect there. We kind of understand this. We understand that, you don't ask him this question every single week, and you don't keep bringing it up and keep peppering him with questions about it. So he's got to do what he's got to do. And it's not just about the coaching staff. It's also about players. Hey, we want better, recovery stuff. We want better, tracking stuff. We want better. This helps their players. And not only that, it helps his family too, right? He needs to help his family. So there are all these things that go into it. But look, Marcus Freeman is the hottest coach in college football right now. I really think that he is. Like, if you're trying to hire somebody, he's the first guy on your list. I think way more than Lane, even though everybody's going to say, well, Lane Kiffin, because he's been down there in the SEC. I guarantee you that the athletic directors would rather have Marcus Freeman than Lane Kiffin. Now, I know some people will argue with that, but where Lane Kiffin's kind of plateau is, right? Can he win a national championship? Maybe. I don't know. But with Marcus Freeman, and he gets everything he wants and he's at the right place, I mean, you could take that to, who knows where that could go. Probably never going to see another Nick Saban again, but he's a guy who could win multiple championships, I think, with the right situation. But guess what? I think Notre Dame is there. It's the right situation right now for him. And I don't think that there's any reason for him to leave. And we've kind of discussed it on the boards, and people saying, look, coaches, when you're making $12 million, are you leaving for 14? Probably not. Marcus Freeman's got how many kids? You know what I mean? You can't go to your wife and say, we're going to leave for $2 million. By the way, you have all your kids are in all these schools and everybody likes it here and blah, blah, blah. So money is money. And I don't think that coaches, when they get to this level, especially when they're making that kind of money, that money is the biggest motivating factor. I think the biggest motivating factor are, am I frustrated with this job? Or do I want another challenge? I think those are the only two reasons that these coaches leave. With Brian Kelly, I think that answer was both yes to that situation, but I knew that all along. I mean, he tried to leave after playing for a national championship.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just waiting for the right gig, the right situation.
Yeah. He did a lot of stuff. Yeah.
So this is just, he wanted out. I don't believe Marcus Freeman wants out. I really don't believe he wants out. I think it would have to take the right perfect situation, and he would have to be frustrated with his situation at Notre Dame. And I don't think that that's the case by any stretch of the imagination. And two, I don't think it's ever gonna be, because Notre Dame finally has an it coach. They finally have things going in the right direction. They finally have a good situation into the playoff, the best it's ever been, way better than BCS and bowl game situations. It's the best situation they've ever had. They can finally compete with other teams, because they weren't going to play under the table like all these other teams. But now that it's above the table, now you can finally compete. And so there are so many good, positive things that I think Marcus Freeman has at Notre Dame right now that it would take a lot for him to leave. And so Irish fans, I know that they get upset and they hate seeing his name mentioned, but it's a good thing. And Marcus even said it. It's a good thing. That means that our program is doing well. That means that we are doing the right things, and that people like what they see in our program, and they want to take what we do and emulate it. Well, how could that not be a good thing? Of course, that's a good thing. And then, of course, there's, is he going to, why won't he just say that I won't go anywhere? Again, I just gave you the reasons why. And then why do the press not always ask him every 5 seconds about it? I just gave you the reasons why. And hopefully people will listen to that and understand that all these things come into the factor. And if you're a Notre Dame fan, you want him. You want all this out there. You really do, because it's going to get him what he wants the most. And if he's getting everything that he wants, he's going to stay here. So let the whole process play out. And as long as he keeps winning, which I think he will, and he does well in the playoff, he's going to have a lot more bargaining power than he does currently right now by saying, yes, I'm 100% staying. I have no desire to leave anywhere else. That's why all this goes on. Greg, you wanted to add something?
Just, we got to keep in mind too, Florida's open. LSU is open. If Lane Kiffin goes somewhere, then Ole Miss will be open. Other jobs are going to open up. Penn State is open. We got to get ready for the fact that there's going to be rumors. There's going to be talk about this. When you have a coach like Marcus Freeman, it is going to happen. Like, get mentally prepared for the fact that there's going to be stories linked. You know, he's interested, back channels. We're going to hear a lot about back channels, right? So people just need to prep themselves mentally for that stuff. Stay locked in to irishsportsdaily.com, and like, we will get the information should there be some that comes out, right? I just think people need to mentally prepare for it. There's never going to be a moment where it goes away until all of those jobs are filled. And then there's going to be other, openings that are created by other coaches taking positions. Like, this is going to be a long process. You don't have jobs like these open and it doesn't affect Notre Dame in some kind of way, whether it's Marcus Freeman or anyone else. So it is the season for that, and people got to prepare for that season. You know what? It's a coaching carousel season. You know what other season's coming up there, Mike? You know what else coming up? Christmas
Pickleball.
Season's coming up.
And
the Christmas season is coming up, and you got to get prepared for that. There are gifts that you need to get for your kids and your teachers and all those things, right? You got to give them out. And I always have this problem. What do I get for my kids' teachers, right? You got to have the gift. And I want to introduce the people to a new sponsor of the show. It's Goods Candies. Goods Candies, Goods Chocolate. It's a small Indiana-based chocolate company with recipes going back nearly 100 years. They're a small batch producer of decadent confections ranging from toffee to cream centers to their latest offering, peanut butter bombs. Peanut butter bombs, boys. Forrest Gump said it himself. Life is like a box of chocolates, but at Goods Candies, they want to make sure you know what you're getting, right? You get some of these Seas candies and they've got stuff in the middle. I don't know what that is, right? But with Goods Chocolates, you know what it is. It's cream centers, have a unique design, so you always know what's waiting inside. All varieties are offered in milk and dark chocolate. For our business listeners, Goods Candies offers customized chocolate bar gift boxes. These aren't customized wrappers like you get at the bank. These are customized chocolate bars that include your logo or a message. Please make the ideal client gift, and Goods Candies can handle all shipping for you. Their website is www.goodscandies.com. Viewers can save 20% off through the end of the year with promo code ISD. Place your order online or reach out to Goods Candies at goodscandies.com with questions.
All right, Greg, but you were mentioning, and here's the other thing that you were mentioning about, because there's going to be so many jobs that are open, what Irish fans, really their biggest fear is that some of Notre Dame's quality assistant coaches are going to be up for these jobs, not necessarily head coaching jobs, but, when that many places open up, they're going to be looking for defensive coordinators. They're going to be looking for offensive coordinators. And Notre Dame has a lot of great coaches. And so, again, this is why you want Marcus Freeman to continue to win and better his program, because he has then more bargaining power. So if he wants to try and keep Mike Mickens and say, you know what, I'll pay you as much as a position coach as you could get at some mid-level defensive coordinator job, you're better off staying here and hope, waiting for the next opportunity here. That's why that this is important. So I just wanted to kind of point that out and let people know that it's important for the whole process to play out. Very smart people are behind this and dealing with this, and I just think Notre Dame's going to be in great shape. Yama, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to add that totally agree with what you said and what Greg was saying too. Like, yeah, there's going to be speculation. You can't help it. And I think Vamos Irish brought up in the chat about how come they don't say anything about like Kirby Smart or Ryan Day or Dan Lanning. Well, they do bring up with Dan Lanning, and Dan Lanning actually has to like say no a lot. Like he has to say all the time, and it's become a thing where they just don't ask him as much anymore because it's pretty obvious he's got a good thing going at Oregon. but they're asking because all those guys left before. The previous coaches, like Cristobal left. I know it's for his alma mater, but Willie Taggart left for Florida State. They left for good jobs, but they left. And it's the same with Marcus Freeman. People they viewed Notre Dame in a way where they think, yeah, it's a good job, but it's not it's not the job. Like, they don't think it's one of the top jobs. A lot of people view LSU as a top 3, top 4 job in the country, right? That's how a lot of people view it. And I mean, certainly I'm sure Brian Kelly did. Like, that's, and I get why. But there's all these other factors into it that make Notre Dame the job that is Notre Dame right now. The head coach of Notre Dame is a much better job than it's better than LSU right now.
Oh yeah.
Because of how it's set up, because of their path to the playoff is a lot easier than LSU, who has to play Bama every year. They have to go through more hoops. They have to do these other things. You're also like, you can have a Heisman winner and get fired 2 years later. Like, there's a lot more there too, where, I mean, they fired guys, win national championship. You get fired a couple years later. Like, that has happened multiple times to them. And fair enough, that's part of the gig there. But like, there's that. There's also like living in Baton Rouge. He actively had a chance, if it was like an even job, to go to Baton Rouge. And that was the thing. Like, him and his family didn't want to go to Baton Rouge. That's part of the reason why he chose Notre Dame there. And I mean, of course, he didn't know that it was going to be like a 1-year deal with Brian Kelly, but like, he was probably only going to be at Notre Dame for 1 year anyways. He would have taken another head coaching job. He probably was going to get the Duke job or something like that if he didn't get the Notre Dame job. So there's always going to be speculation, about it until like it just goes away over time. That's just what it is. But he has obviously elevated the job to a higher level than it has been. And we're to the point where they're bringing in like a top 3 recruiting class. They went to the national championship last year, even though they lost 2 games at the beginning of this year. Look at the FanDuel odds or whatever, any of those things. Like, Notre Dame is like, pretty much people are penciling in Notre Dame. If they went and run the table, people are penciling in Notre Dame as another playoff team. And at any other school that you go to, it's harder to do that. And there's just like, even for some of the assistants, I mean, anything could happen. Guys can go to the NFL. Guys can get, promotions, go and be a DC somewhere. But those things, I mean, everyone thought that about certain guys before, but it doesn't always work that way. So you just never know. You never know. Like, no one would have said like, well, I think that Jared Parker's getting the Troy job after this year, right? Like, no one would have predicted that. You just have to kind of let it all play out. And the thing is that, and I think one of the things that you've seen, and one of the reasons why Brian Kelly ultimately failed at LSU is that he didn't bring any of the assistants with him. Like, the guys didn't want to come with him from Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And his initial hires outside of Mike Denbrock, who left after 2 years, were pretty disastrous. Like, he did not have a good, didn't have a good staff, tried to fix it, didn't really fix it. And the one thing you could say about Notre Dame, yeah, certainly certain people aren't happy with this person or that person. Obviously, Chris Ash was a very good start. But overall, Marcus Freeman has done a great job of like hiring the staff and doing that. And you kind of feel like, well, if guys leave and if Marcus Freeman's still here, they're probably going to hire some pretty good coaches.
I'll tell you, some guys are going to get a lot of opportunities. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of guys that are, coordinators and stuff like that. Like, there's going to be a lot of Marcus Freemans out there this year because, it's like a lot of people say, well, why would Cignetti, why doesn't Marcus just do what Cignetti did? And it's like, well, Cignetti's 64 years old, right? He's 64 years old. He's only going to coach at one place for the rest of the time he coaches. So whether it's Indiana or Penn State or wherever, and look what happened to James Franklin, right? He could if you're Signetti, he could win 6 games for the next 5 years and they still wouldn't fire him. They just wouldn't, because it's a hard gig to have, and he could last out there and make it. Where if you're Penn State, you can't do that. So, but I think that the interesting thing is a lot of these coaches, and people talk about, as you mentioned, Kirby. Well, look, Kirby's been around for a long time, right? And he's got a good gig, and he's not going to go anywhere because he's got a good gig, and he's already been asked about
Georgia
a bunch of places.
alum and all that.
Yeah,
too,
and I'm sure Alabama looked at him and said, and he didn't look. If he ain't taking Alabama, he's not taking LSU. You know what I mean? So, where are you going to go? There's just not a lot of great names out there. So, what's going to happen is a lot of teams are going to see the success that Notre Dame has had with Marcus Freeman hiring a coordinator, and they're going to be like, well, we got to take that chance, because we're not going to get a guy that is a proven winner. I mean, look at Penn State. A lot of people think, okay, well, it's probably Matt Rule. Well, what does he want? How's he any better than James Franklin? He could be, but he may not be. And then you see them kicking around guys like Dan Mullen and all this type of stuff. It's like, nah, man, there's no way I would hire Dan Mullen. Not that he's a bad coach. I think he's a good coach. But we've seen his ceiling. It ain't going anywhere. He's not going to suddenly get it. He's not going to suddenly be hip. You know what I mean? It's not there's just nowhere for him to go. So teams are going to try and cash in. And so that's why a lot of these young coordinators and guys like that have these situations, it's like what Michigan did with when Jim Harbaugh left. So anyway, I don't want to get too deep into the coaching stuff. It's I just kind of wanted to explain to folks why all this happens, and hopefully they'll understand it and just let the thing happen. And there's nothing you can do to change it. And even if we were to ask Marcus Freeman 7,000 times if he's taking a job, he's never going to say yes. And he'd be stupid to sit there and say, I have absolutely no desire to go coach anywhere else, because you lose leverage. So there's really nothing you're going to gain by asking it 7,000 times. It just isn't. So, these are all, it's going to be an interesting situation, but, we'll just have to see it all unfold. And the good news is I think Notre Dame's going to have the opportunity to continue to win and do the things they need to do, and it'll take care of itself. Now, game this weekend, Jamie. I thought it was kind of interesting. BC kind of gave a fight to Louisville, but I think Louisville was in a classic letdown game and just not really dialed in and ready like they needed to be. That happens all the time. Just because they stepped up in this game, I don't think it'll matter. But it's one of these things where look, Sullivan Absher hasn't played a lot, right? And Joel Otting hasn't played a lot, and Gerby kind of getting into things here. It seemed to work out okay, for USC and everything. But will anything change? I don't know. I mean, I go into this game and I start looking for things to get concerned about, and I'm just not seeing it, dude. I'm not seeing it. Nothing to really be concerned about. Your thoughts here?
No, I mean, the one thing you could say is that it was probably a good thing that BC gave a game, and they showed that they didn't give up against Louisville. And that's probably the thing that I would say about BC outside of the Pitt game, which was just like, it was an ugly game for them, where it did look like they quit. But like since then, I mean, they've lost 7 games in a row, but they don't look like defeated. Like in terms of like guys still play hard. They're just not good. They're just not good. And I knew it was going to be a tough year. It was like set up like, they went 7-6 last year. Bill O'Brien went 7-6, and like pretty good start. But they just don't have the talent or the funds. Like it was a rebuilding job that he inherited, and they don't have the guys to step in, and they don't have the money to keep anyone who's like really, if anyone's trying to steal someone from somewhere, like they don't have a chance to keep a lot of those guys. Like those guys get NIL deals from someone else and they leave. So they're playing a ton of freshmen on defense. The defense is so bad. Like it is really, really bad. And they were pretty decent last year, actually. And they jumped to like a pretty from the year before, they were 94th in DF plus before Tim Lewis came, and then they were 45th last year. But they're 116th this year. They stink. And they're 129th in points per drive. And it's, Louisville ran all over them. Other teams have Pitt passed all over them. They're playing too many freshmen. They've had so many injuries. Like there's so many guys. Like their best linebackers been out since like week 2. Their best defensive tackle's been out like pretty much this whole year. And they just don't like Kamori Dixon was a guy who was going to play for them this year. And his first game this year was against Louisville last week. And they're just playing like a lot of young guys in the secondary, like a lot of young guys at corner, like true freshmen, and not like blue chip guys, guys maybe who have a chance to be okay, but like they're not ready to play at a power forward level yet. And then it's the same thing on offense too, right? Where they don't have the depth to withstand any kind of injuries. So when they get a couple guys beat up, they don't have a Sullivan Absher. Like Sullivan Absher would have been like, a good starter for them. And he's like the 7th, 8th guy for Notre Dame. Like that's not what they have. They don't have that. So they're playing guys up front that like shouldn't be playing. They're playing there's a true freshman starting for them at guard who's, should not be starting. Right. And they have some decent play. Like they got a couple good receivers. The tight end's pretty good. The backs are okay. But up front, they've been beat up, and they have like 2 NFL guys up front, but the rest of the guys are just not good. And the quarterback is a tough kid. The new kid who's like, not new because he's started the last 2 games. Like he played for them last year, Grayson James. Tough kid. You could see like he was beat up in that Louisville game, and he's there. You got like nothing but respect for him, but he's just not that good of a player. And he's, they give up too much pressure on the quarterback. They're just not a good enough team. And there's a reason why you lose 7 games and why you're giving up like 492 yards per game in the last 4 games. And it's not a game that they'll fight and play hard. And I could see it. Maybe the best case scenario for them would be like, remember Stanford a couple years ago, Mike, where Notre Dame went to play Stanford. And you're like, wow, all these things went their way, but you're like, Stanford's terrible. But why was it tied in the second quarter? Then it just kind of fell apart for them. That's kind of like the best case scenario for them, is them kind of hanging on like that. If Notre Dame comes out and like kind of takes care of business where they should, I mean, they should score 40, 50 points and win by, 30.
That's that's what Stanford did to Miami last week. They just kind of hung around, and Miami was certainly not the Miami of old. That's for sure. Or the Miami that we saw in the first game. And so Stanford looked a little bit more competent, but that's what you worry about, when you start playing some of these games, is that, you're not dialed in. I will say last year, Notre Dame had the opportunity and played in a lot of these games at the end of the year. And guess what? Notre Dame played some of their best football against some of these teams, and they put it together, and they built confidence and depth, because later some players came back and were healthy. And so we have to hope that that's what they do. And I watched, again, all of Notre Dame's opponents that are left on the schedule the last week, and the Pitt game is certainly the one that scares me the most. That quarterback can throw. I mean, he is accurate. That kid's a good player. Is he, Marcel Reed, no, he's not going to escape and kill you for 170 yards rushing, but he's got enough escapability to where he can avoid pressure, and he does a good job of throwing on the run. When things break down, he finds plays. And the thing that scares me the most about that kid is he just doesn't make that many mistakes. Now, the one thing I will say is when I watched Syracuse against Pitt, now Pitt had been down some offensive linemen, but the interesting thing was they were down offensive linemen in last week's game as well. Didn't seem to matter, but against Syracuse, that kid got harassed and hounded. And so that gave me hope that Notre Dame's offensive line or defensive line should be able to pressure this kid. But he just didn't make a lot of dumb, boneheaded mistakes. And that's the thing. When you have a kid that's accurate, can avoid pressure, and doesn't make bad mistakes, it could be a long day. And the one thing I will say is I just don't think their defense is as good as a lot of people think. I just don't think they've played anybody that's all that good. And so that makes their defensive numbers look good. But I just don't think that they're anywhere near the kind of defense that a lot of people think. But just real quick, your thoughts on the games that are left on the schedule and what stands out to you.
Yeah, I think one of the things with Pitt is obviously like the toughest game that's left, and I do agree with that kid. Henschel is he's a good quarterback. Like he's got a chance to be really, really good, and obviously he's a true freshman. I will say that I've seen that game was pretty favorable for Pitt in a lot of ways because they just, if you notice, if you kind of look at who was missing for NC State in that game, because they got beat up quite a bit against Notre Dame, and they were missing some pretty key guys, even more than they were against
Plus
Notre Dame.
Their big guy got hurt too in the game.
Yes,
their big D tackle. Yep.
So I think that that definitely had an impact on that, but Heinkel, I think, is I don't think he hasn't really played at anyone decent on defense yet.
Yeah.
I think at that Florida State game, he definitely that game where he played well, he threw the ball up a lot. And I'd say he's got a little lucky with some of these plays that he does where he's a lot similar to CJ Carr, where you're his mistakes are he's trying to make a play. He's just trying to make a play, and which you respect, but it's one of those things where it's that can come to cost you when you're playing better teams. But and I think their defense, they have some good players, but they're also beat up. And Pitt is not a team too. Desmond Reed got hurt again. The back, he's a very good back. Yeah. He's been hurt all year, and I don't think he's going to be, even if he's back for Notre Dame. He just hasn't. He hasn't been right all year. Navy certainly is because of their offense. They're going to create big plays. Horvath, he had another big game this weekend. They can do some things, but their defense is terrible. It's really terrible. It's worse than it was last year, and obviously they weren't very good last year. So I think that's something that Navy would need a lot of luck, in my opinion, for it to be a game. And Syracuse is just you can really see how Steve Angeli won the job over Ricky Collins. Yeah. He's so much better than Ricky Collins. And so that definitely, I think. And Stanford, man, I'll give Stanford a ton of credit, because to me, they're playing way harder under Frank Reich than they were under Troy Taylor at the end of the year, in that way. But they're also clearly they're not even really a power 4 team in terms of talent. They play hard and they compete. So really, it's just at Pitt, the fact that that is the game that's kind of circled, and that's going to be a big game though, makes me think that Notre Dame will come in and really, really be prepared and probably win convincingly. But if they lay an egg in that game, that's a game you lose for sure.
Yeah. You got to play clean. As long as they play clean, they'll win. Greg?
I'd like Jamie to comment on the disgrace that is the Acrisure Stadium field. There's
Oh my God!
I'm seeing
Don't get me
reports,
started.
Jamie. I'm seeing reports. What's going on? I mean,
It's been
come on,
horrible.
get it figured out.
Also, I hate that they play. I can't believe it. I'm for grass field, obviously. I'm if you can't have grass, but it is getting to the point where kind of remember the Notre Dame's grass was so bad that they were like, well, we got to just go to field turf.
Notre Dame's grass, like anything after like the USC game was
always
just
terrible.
it was unplayable. I mean, it was just you couldn't play on it.
Well, it was really, really bad. So Acrisure is the Pitts Stadium, so people knows, right? Like that they play in the Pittsburgh Steelers Stadium, so I see it all the time. It's so bad, and they just replaced it again. It's really, really bad, and I mean I don't know anything about I'm not like a I'm not a landscape guy. I don't know what the heck makes good grass and what makes work. All I know is it's terrible. It's bad, and it's not helping anybody. It's not helping any. Oh, one thing I want to bring up about Pitt though, they're a tempo team, so they are going to try to go fast and furious, and that is a thing. And they're going to try to go quick and take shots and all that. And if it's rolling, it can be good, right? But you can also have a lot of 3 and outs if you're like that too. So it's weirdly a game where it's like that tempo could really like help them, and all of a sudden Notre Dame's offense is on the field forever, or
getting a ton of possessions,
and all that kind of stuff. Or it could be one of those things where like, oh my gosh, Notre Dame's up 3 touchdowns and they ran 14 plays on their last 3 drives and that's it. Like, so I would keep an eye out for that in that game.
Yeah, I mean,
I just
it sounds
think
like that.
Pitt's a good. Go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say it sounds like a style kind of thing that could benefit Notre Dame, although that's what Pitt's going with. You want to learn different styles when you play, and you can do that with the pickleball clinic from Will Howes if you want to change your style. You're playing from the baseline or whatever the baseline might be in pickleball. You're playing up at the net. You can learn a whole bunch of different kind of ways. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of Notre Dame's offense, isn't it? You can win multiple ways, and you want to win multiple ways with your pickleball game. Of course, you can do that with H2 Pickleball, founded by Notre Dame alum Todd Hill. He's teaming with fellow alums Jack Gibbs and Will Howes, who's a top 10 pickleball pro, to bring Notre Dame fans to the Notre Dame Pickleball Crew League. Besides football, what better way to connect and engage Notre Dame fans than through pickleball? Membership is free, and members will have access to special pickleball events and discounts. The next event will be a Will Howes Pickleball Clinic on the Friday before the Syracuse game. So right after the Pitt game, you can talk about, as you hone your pickleball skills, you can talk about how Notre Dame reeled in the Pitt offense defensively. Members can also get discounted tickets to the Syracuse game if you attend the Pickleball Clinic by Will Howes. Contact Todd at h2pickleball.com or call him at 574-339-5195 to join the league. Be sure to visit the H2 Pickleball facility in Mishawaka when you are in town. H2 Pickleball is located at 55801 Evergreen Plaza Drive in Mishawaka, Indiana.
All right, guys. So I guess we'll close the show with our final thoughts here on Kelly and all this, and I don't have much to say. I don't like to kick a guy, when he's down and that type of thing. I'll just say I'm not surprised, and I think Brian Kelly is a good coach, but I think he's a good coach for an era that was 25 years ago, and if he were coaching 25 years ago and had this opportunities, I think he'd have more success. I just think he would. But I think it's a situation where he's not meant for today's game because he doesn't like to recruit. He's not very good at it when he does. He's awkward at it. And that's why I was laughing very hard when LSU decided to take him. And we were all laughing. The staff at ISD was laughing because we all knew how this was going to end up. We all knew how it was going to end up. I thought he'd have some good years. He'd have some bad years, just like he did at Notre Dame. I also knew that they would not be patient with the bad years like Notre Dame athletic directors were. Sometimes I think to the fault of Notre Dame. But that's, one of the reasons that Notre Dame is attractive to some head coaches is you're just not run out the door at this time. But, it's not just about Brian Kelly. There are a lot of good people that coach there. There are a lot of staff people that coach there that are all getting fired, and it's a lot of people say, well, Kelly, go here. Kelly, I just don't think Kelly wants to coach. I don't think he wanted to coach when he took the LSU job. I just think he wanted $100 million, and he would do what he had to do to get the money and not a thing more. And that's just kind of where I think he's at in life. So I don't think he's going to go anywhere else. I'll be surprised if he does, because it won't be big enough for him. There won't be, I suppose you could get a Michigan State, but even if you did,
yeah, he's not.
Where are you going to get a staff? Yeah, where are you going to get a staff? I mean, look, nobody followed him to LSU, and the thing that stood out the most to me, and I kept saying this when we were all chatting, is this is kind of Brian Kelly at this point. When the game was going on and something bad happened, they'd show to Brian Kelly, and he was on the headset screaming at somebody. Whether it was the offensive coordinator or the defensive coordinator or the special teams coordinator or one of his players. And I mean, if I were an athletic director, I'd fire him for that alone, because it is a constant thing with him and has been. And
can't be like
sooner or later, it's got to be you're at fault. And if there's one thing that I love about Marcus Freeman more than anything as a head coach, it's him coming out after they lay an egg and then him taking all the arrows and just saying, it's me. It's all me. He's done that every time they've had these clunker games and has said, this is me. This is on me. I have to fix this. This is all about me. I take all accountability. We're not looking at anybody else but me. And that's a modern day coach. That's why everybody wants Marcus Freeman. And that's why Brian Kelly, I think, was fired. And I just don't think he can relate to people today in this environment. And because you have portal and people can leave so quickly, and because you have NIL and people can be stolen so quickly, you really have to treat people in a different way. And to me, I think that this has been it's not been a surprise. I don't think Brian Kelly is necessarily a bad person. I just think that he cannot function and excel in today's environment because he just doesn't know how to manipulate those waters. And I think Marcus Freeman does, and coaches like Marcus Freeman do. And the good news is that's somebody else's problem, and we don't have to worry about that. Any thoughts you want to add, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably say that I'll take it back that I don't feel that I feel bad for him, because I don't. I mean, I don't in the way that feel bad for anyone. I've never root for anyone to get fired.
Yeah, it's just not nice.
It's I don't root for anyone to get fired, even if I don't like them. I don't like BK, but I will say that there were so many red flags when he took the job that I thought he was going to get it more right, just in general, just because of he would get the staff a little bit more right. Like he'd kind of fall backward. Like, because if you think about what happened, as he's very famous for the reboot of, after 2016, the reboot.
He should have been fired.
He should have been fired then, but he really got lucky because he got Elko, and then through Elko, he got
Clark
Lee.
Yeah.
And that saved him. Absolutely. Because it changed the defense, and it changed those two brought a culture that was obviously carried on by Marcus Freeman as defense coordinator and then as coach. But those guys really kind of set a culture there that really shaped that last part of success. And he's not a culture shaper. Like, that is not who he is. Maybe at one time he was. Obviously, he's won a ton of games. Like, he's college football fame, whatever, right? Like, he's going to be in it if he's not already. I can't remember if he's in it or not. But like, because he's got whatever 200 something wins. He's won national championship D2 and all this kind of stuff. He's had success pretty much everywhere. It's the only place he's been fired. But there was things that were set up for him where it's like, I mean, he got the Heisman Trophy winner quarterback. He had first round receivers. He had all this. They have dudes on defense. There's zero reason they should be as bad as they are. I mean, they're better this year. Blake Baker's made them better, but they should be a top 5 defense. Like, they should absolutely be LSU should be top 5 defense every year based on who they get. And but I think though what it says about like kind of like the culture of there and how important like culture is to kind of having success is that's a perfect example of like, you can't just hire a guy based on like, hey, he's won this. You have to look at all the other factors that go into it. And one thing you could say about Nick Saban that he doesn't get enough credit is he created a culture.
Amazing culture.
Amazing culture. And
I can't
Kirby
stand
Smart,
him, but he was the best ever.
And Kirby Smart has the same kind of culture at Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, even though, they have a ton of talent, they get 5 stars, all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't happen without just the culture that's there. And Notre Dame isn't fighting and resilient like they are as a program. They're not killing these teams. Like, Brian Kelly never used to kill teams. Like, it was very rare that a decent team. It was always like, hey, they won by 14 or something. Notre Dame kills teams now. Even when they don't play that well, they kill teams because of culture. And it's like, well, because there's a standard and we're not living up to that standard. We got to try to get to perfection. It's like, that wasn't the culture at Notre Dame before. And that is really hard to get, especially with young kids these days and where it's at. And like, when you're bringing, especially guys when NIL's involved and all of this. And, Marcus gave the answer today when they asked about Will Pauling and Malachi Fields fitting in. And it's totally true. Obviously, those guys got NIL money to come, right? I'm sure Fields got a huge payday to come. Well, I know he did. But those guys, you don't see like Malachi Fields like pouting when it's like, he only had 1 catch in this game. It's like, no, the guy played at Virginia. He's like, now he's playing in a winning culture and he's happy. He's blocking his butt off to try to get, Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price a touchdown. And that is what happens when it's just like, it is like, we before me, right? And that is the kind of culture that you have to have. And it's funny because I think Brian Kelly in a lot of ways is a me guy in so many ways. Like, he's like, well, I got to make sure I got to get in my 18 holes while I'm on this trip. It's like,
no, totally.
That's not the way anymore.
Can't do it. No, that way. I think you hit it on the nail on the head there. And I put in a post, I guess, was it maybe it was Saturday. And it was about Notre Dame's culture. And if there's one thing that Marcus Freeman has done is he's built that. And you're seeing it in recruiting right now where these kids leave Notre Dame and they talk about the same thing, the culture and the brotherhood that Notre Dame has. And you see it, and I've read stories from, them going to visit other places, but they really talk about how it's unique and it's like just not something you see everywhere else. And that's so important. That's going to be the biggest important thing that's going to happen moving forward because of NIL, because of the portal, and who knows what else is coming down the road. But you really need to recruit the right people. Like at a lot of other places, J.D. Price would not be happy with Jeremiah Love. You know what I mean? That just because J.D. Price could be a Heisman hopeful too somewhere. He could be, 100%. But because J.D. Price is J.D. Price, right? There's no problem there. And I think if truth be known, Jeremiah Love took less money than he could have got at a lot of other places because he wanted to stay at Notre Dame. And he also wanted JD to make sure that JD got paid, and some of his brothers on the team got paid. He could have got paid more elsewhere, was offered more money. And that just goes to show you what types of players that they're recruiting. I mean, Jeremiah Love is a very unselfish person. Very, not many guys would have done what he did. And JD Price could have made a whole lot of money. I know USC offered him crazy money to stick around. And we know that Miami offered Greathouse crazy money to go, elsewhere. So, it's about building that culture and finding the right people. And then once you find the right people, the selfishness isn't an issue. And that, I'm telling you, Jamie, mark my words, that's going to be a big problem at a lot of these blue blood programs moving forward, is how do you maintain and handle those egos with those big price tags? And then when somebody's not performing well and you pull them out of the game, how does that impact your sideline? How does that impact your locker room? How does that impact your practices moving forward? Because you can't screw around with people anymore. There's no days of just waiting to hopefully this guy's going to materialize and be worth the money that we paid him in NIL money, and he never becomes that. You can't screw around with this anymore. Guys are getting fired like Brian Kelly for losing not very many games. And so it's just really important that you recruit the right types of people and personalities. And I think that that's the most exciting thing about Marcus Freeman, is that he really understands that and has done a good job of identifying those people and getting them on campus. And then they see what the culture is, and then they buy into it and they want to be a part of it. So again, I'm excited about where this is headed. I think recruiting, provided they win these 5 and then have a good showing in the playoff, I think recruiting is going to explode in 2027, and this is going to be a whole lot of fun. And look, there's a lot of teams right now, a lot of blue blood programs that are over there going, oh man, we got to start over, right? We're down a bunch of money, like Penn State, And look, if Kiffin takes a job, Ole Miss is going to be in the same situation, and just because he got paid a bunch of money, you just paid to get rid of, Napier and Kelly and, all these other people are just getting flushed and James Franklin. So you're already down the hole about $50 million, because when you consider the buyout of not just the head coach, but all the personnel people, the defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, all the assistant coaches. I mean, those guys all have to get paid too. So just because you got the $100 million coach and isn't this great? Where's the rest of the money coming from? Because you also have to now pay a bunch of players, and just because you're coming in the door, you haven't proven that you can win at Florida or LSU. You've only proven you can win at Ole Miss or, wherever else. That doesn't mean you can win here. And so there's a lot of selling that needs to be done. And Notre Dame is just in such a great place right now, provided they can keep as many of these coaches as they can. And I think they will. And we'll just see what happens. All right. Well, folks, that's going to be it for Power Hour this week. We'll talk to you next week, hopefully after a big win over Boston College. And then we'll get ready for two games that could be real interesting down the stretch here. So thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week on Power Hour.